Are you here to confirm?
I think
yeah, we're live now, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, welcome colleagues to the Communities Committee special meeting rent setting. Do we have any apologies or substitutes?
Yes, convener. Apologies from Councillors Stewart and Proctor, with Councillors Brown and Wan substituting respectively.
Thank you. Number two, do we have any declarations of interest? Is that a no? Looks like no hands. Okay, we'll move on to number three, which is the Housing Capital and Revenue Budget Performance Report 2021. Do we have any questions?
Yes, I've got one.
Councillor Brace, fire away.
Yes, just one on page number 7. In table 4, we're given a figure for supervision and management, and it's looking about, you know, around about a quarter of our gross revenue. And I just wondered if we knew how that compares to other local authorities and RSLs.
Thank you, Councillor Brace. Mr. Morrow, would you like to address that, please?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Thanks, Councillor. The latest statistical comparisons that we have for supervision and management are held by the Scottish Government, and I can forward you, probably the best if I forward you the links to that information. There's various statistical information available there, but essentially in that information, in the charts, you'll see that Angus is lower in terms of supervision and management than all of our neighbouring authorities. That's Dundee, Perth and Kinross and Aberdeenshire. The statistical information they hold is a couple of years behind, but there's always a lag in those comparison figures. But I'll send you the full information afterwards, Councillor, and you can have a look at how we compare to all the other local authorities as well in that table, if that helps.
Yeah, that would be helpful. But I would say, you know, we have a lower rental charge than most local authorities, so it must be quite satisfying to see that we also have a lower proportion of that spent on supervision and management. Quite tricky to pull off, I would have thought. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Brace. Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, thanks, convener. My question initially was on that same table, actually, on page 7. It also refers on page 21, appendix 2. If I can see it again, I'll just call it up. Yeah, I just wondered, the monitoring budget for income and expenditure is 30.951 million, and yet it says our actual spend is 6.7, our income 7.2, up to 31st December 20, and yet we're suddenly going to go up to full outturn back to almost budget again. How come we've got so little income and so little expenditure in the first 9 months, and you were suddenly going to spend what looks like another 23 million in the last 3 months and get 23 million pound extra income in the last 3 months? Am I misreading this?
Mr. Morrow, is that one for you?
I'll start out answering, but probably for my colleague as well, Mr. Mills, I think. But certainly, you're right that the actual expenditures to the end of December, there's always again a time lag between the date when the statistics are pulled off and the end actual figures, which we won't know actually until sort of into the new financial year. So there's always that delay. There's also a delay in terms of collating the figures for things like capital expenditure as well, because obviously when you're only 3/4 of the way through the year, actually in accounting terms probably there's, you know, you're even further back. So the projected outturn figures that you have in that table are the ones that we're expecting to get very close to. Stephen, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, there's a couple of points I've been make. One is that the financing charges budget 11.2 million. That's zero at the moment, doesn't come in until right at the year end. So that's part of the year end calculations for accounts purposes. So that'll be, you know, that's part of the reason for the lag in spend. There's a significant one-off cost to be, or year end cost to be coming in there for principal and interest debt servicing costs. And also there's, as part of the accounts process, there's the charges that are coming from central services, so finance, legal, HR, and again, they're all calculated at the year end based on activity levels. And so they're a significant year end charge that comes through at the year end, and we don't reflect in the actuals during the course of the year, basically to save on the admin burden of having to calculate those on an ongoing basis. So that's on the spend side, why there's two significant areas of lag. On the income side, I'm not sure. Maybe John would be able to comment on why the income lag. I'm not clear why there would be such a lag on the income position at the end of December.
Now, that was the big query. I couldn't understand on rent, for example, if we've got a budget of 30 million, how we've only got 7 million in after 9 months.
Yeah.
Can I come back in, convener, if that's
Yes,
okay?
please come in, Mr. Morrow.
Again, councillor, I think it's the date at which we take these figures down. There is a time lag, and we're still in the process of calculating the figures for the third quarter and the fourth quarter, obviously, which we're in currently. So that's why the figure seems low, and it's usually at that kind of level at this time of year when we take these reports in. There are a few, as you'll see through the narrative, in terms of income, a few variances, and to some extent the projected outturns this year are somewhat harder to do because of the COVID situation. But I think we're relatively content that we're still going to get close to our the expected income that we have in the outturn there.
Yeah, can we just go back on that?
Yes, fire away.
It doesn't make sense to me, to be frank. I hear about a lag, but we're talking about accounting here, and we're 12 of through the year, and we're only showing 25% of our rental income. Surely we should be showing 75% of our rental income. I don't understand the answer here. But simply accruing it would be the right thing to do. But how can we be so far behind in the collection of rent after 9 months?
Mr. Morrow, do you want to come back, or do you feel you need to do this in a written answer to Councillor Cheek?
Yeah, I think probably, Councillor, the best thing for us to do would be to get all the up-to-date statistics and forward those to you, and we can provide those to the other members of the committee as well, if that's the best way to address it, because we can give you the full information.
Yeah, and convener, it's Stephen Mill here. Can I just point out, we don't take an accrued position during the course of the year. So I mean, our reported position is essentially what's through our ledger on a cash position. We don't take on a monthly basis accruals into our ledger. We do that at the year end. We take a debtor and creditor accrual position. So those actuals won't reflect accruals at all.
Okay, I get that, Stephen. I just don't understand
the cash lag.
The big figures just don't look right.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why we're reporting them if they're not right at the 31st of December. Doesn't seem right to me.
I think Mr. Morrow's given us assurance he'll write out to the committee with an updated answer. I think that's the best we can do at the moment. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, convener. I'm looking at Appendix 1 on page 9. And our actual spend on new build to the 31st of December was 3.21 million. Our outturn is 6.183 million for the year. So we're going to almost double that in 3 months and have a projected overspend of 1.971 million. I don't understand those figures. Please could somebody explain them?
Mr. Morrow.
Yeah, I think, Councillor, that the reason for that is, as you know, the construction industry was shut down for the first 4 months of the financial year, and when it restarted, there was a period in which the contractors were able to set up on site again. So it took a while for those new build contracts to get back on track. But once they're, and now they are on track, the spend has accelerated, and that's the reason why, although there's at the end of December, again, there was a relatively, half of the figure, as you say, in comparison to the outturn, because they're all now on site. The spend has accelerated over the sort of last few months of the year as opposed to the first few months.
And given the flooding we've had in January and this weather now, you're still confident you're going to hit those figures?
I think that the weather that we're currently experiencing is going to have an inevitable effect. The figures that we provide obviously are based on a point in time, and there's always a proviso, I guess, that weather conditions may affect the program. But you're right, there will be some delay in the last week or so, and potentially for the next week as well. So that's inevitably going to probably affect the estimates for the outturn in a way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions? No. Councillor Cheap, you still have your hand up.
Oh, sorry, I'll bring it down.
Thank you. Any comments? No. If we go back to the recommendations then, I think we've carried it out. We've had a scrutiny and we've had a review. So are we happy to agree recommendations 1 and 2?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Number 4 is the housing revenue account rent setting and budget strategy 21-22 to 24 to 25. Do you have any questions on this? Councillor Devine?
Thanks, convener. It's page 25 and 2 very important paragraphs, I think, are 7.6 and 7.7. I think we're all happy that we have less than 3% of the council stock in band D, but for people in that 3% with weather like this, it won't be a tremendous experience. But my concern is, and I know it's a concern of Mr. Morrow and everybody else in housing, that between 25 and 2032, there's going to have to be a huge increase in activity. In 7.7, it's mentioning that there's a programme being developed with a range of short, medium and long-term objectives. So I wonder if you could give me a bit of a timescale as to when that's going to be produced. Presumably, the short term starts like this year, and it'll be going on till 32. It'll come in front of the climate change MOG too, I would imagine. Thank you.
Mr. Morrow, would you like to address that, please?
Yeah, thanks, convener. I mean, I think you're right, councillor, that obviously there's challenging targets to achieve in terms of energy efficiency and bringing the existing stock up to the zero carbon standard, and a milestone on the way to achieving that is the EIS 2. You're right in terms of the short term. We've already started. I guess our programme was probably set from really the beginning of 2020 in terms of a 25-year programme, so that we achieve zero carbon by 2045, which is what we're working to, and we have started on that journey. What part of it as we go along is a learning about what's effective, how long it takes, how much it's costing, and what resources we need in place, and also what skills there are required in the construction industry as well. Because as all local authorities and other stock owners also embark on this kind of journey, obviously that might mean that there'll be shortages in terms of those skills, and I know that's an issue that's being picked up nationally. We do have a business plan puts in place the financing and the resources available to deliver those targets that we set out there for EIS 2 and zero carbon. But the practical difficulties also involve a sort of a logistical arrangement whereby we managed to do a lot of these improvements to the existing stock with tenants either in situ or tenants decanted out or carrying out the improvements whilst the properties are empty. So those are the arrangements that we're currently thinking about, and they may have an impact on obviously how quickly the programme is carried out, albeit we're still intending to hit those main 2 milestones on the way. So once we have I think a sort of a fuller idea about the logistical arrangements, what I suggest is we hold a member briefing for all members to explain how we're going to do that, and that'll give a chance for members to fully scrutinise our plans.
That's
That would be really helpful. Thank you. Thanks, convener.
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Cheap was next.
Yeah, thanks again. This is a quick one, but it's really for Mr. Morrow. John, just on page 31 and 32, on the new build figures that are in there right the way through to 2024-25. Carusi's not shown on there with any specific plan, and I would have thought that by 24-25 we would have somewhere with the Kinloch school site with build. Am I again incorrect with that, or I would like to think by 24 we've got that done?
Mr. Morrow?
I think those, because there's quite a long lead-in period, Councillor, with most of these projects. That one, if you like, we're coming to relatively cold, so there's quite a lot of groundwork to be done yet in the design and fully understanding exactly how many units we'll be delivering and the form and so on. So that'll be the reason why it doesn't appear in there. It's obviously in the Strategic Housing Investment Plan, but I envisage that it's at the end of that period, so it's probably just missing off the end of the plan here, and that's the reason it doesn't appear there.
Okay, but there's a chance with a fair wind we could actually bring that forward a bit, surely. Shouldn't take us 4 years to get this whole thing in place.
I think it's just a question of resources, and although it's a priority for us, as you can see, all the other projects that we're planning to deliver are already in the programme. Where we can bring projects forward, we do that, and that's part of the discussions we have with the Scottish Government in terms of their grant funding, because it's a balance between our capital resources, the Scottish Government's funding, and then practically being able to deliver with contractor availability. So the Strategic Housing Investment Plan is a working document, and as I say, if the resource positioning changes, then we can move projects forward if we can, and certainly that's the intention, obviously to deliver as much as we can, as quickly as we can. So it's really a case of balancing all of the projects within the resources available.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Cheat. Thank you. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Convener. I just have a couple of queries on page 28. And the first one is rechargeable repairs, where we had set 0.06 for the year. We're now looking at 0 for the year, and we're setting 0.003, which is, in my view, 3,000 quid. Seems to be a very small sum to be putting in there. And the other one is for the bad debt provision, which was set at 500,000, expected to be 500,000, and setting again for 500,000. Given the problems that we've seen with COVID and all the concomitant issues, is that figure a proper figure to put in there, a reliable figure? Or should there be some view about whether that should be increased or decreased?
Mr. Morrow, please.
Yeah, we had a look at that bad debt figure, because you're right, Councillor, that there are concerns that there may be increases in rent arrears. We haven't seen that over the course of the year in any great form. So although there's been a moratorium on evictions, at this stage we're not necessarily expecting that there to be a huge increase as we go into the new financial year. So at the moment we're satisfied that the 500,000 there is a reasonable figure to provide.
And the rechargeable repairs?
The rechargeable repairs, probably that's one that if I can drill down a bit more on that one and provide you with some information after the committee, I think, Councillor, that would probably be the best way to address that. Certainly rechargeable repairs for the current year, because there's been a lot fewer routine repairs done because of the pandemic. To some extent, that's reduced the number of rechargeable repairs that we might identify anyway. But we can have a look at that in more detail and send you the information after committee if that would help.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Moore, thank you. Any other questions? No. Before I ask for comments, I'll set the scene myself. So, as you know, our tenant steering group play a major role in identifying the options for rent increases and support the tenants' consultation process on these options. This year, their recommended option was an increase of 2%, and this was supported by a majority of tenants in the consultation. The chosen 2% option will increase the average weekly rent to £72.28 per week, and ensure that Angus Council's rent remains amongst the most affordable in Scotland. This rent increase helps Angus Council to achieve a balance between maintaining rents at an affordable level and being able to continue with significant investment in stock improvements and increasing new housing supply. Our customer satisfaction ratings strongly indicate that our tenants agree with this approach, but we will not ignore the fact that some of our householders still struggle with fuel bills. This is why we are continuing to prioritise energy efficiency improvements in our housing stock. Of course, we are determined to achieve zero carbon targets and help address the climate emergency, but the ambition that drives us forward is to combat fuel poverty and child poverty. These are challenging times, and I want all our tenants to know that if they do need help with household finances, she should never hesitate to seek energy advice or welfare rights support that is available to them. Our housing team write out to all householders to inform them of the rent rise, and I have asked Mr. Morrow to include contact details on welfare rights and energy advice as part of this letter, so they know how and who to contact for advice. Information will also go into the housing blog and the council's social media channels. Finally, I'd like to give a big thanks for the work the Tenant Steering Group carry out in representing the views of Angus Council housing tenants and the worthwhile engagement they carry out with councillors and council officers. Is there any further comments from colleagues? Anybody? Councillor Devine?
Yeah, I would just like to make a very general comment that I think that the housing staff have done an amazing job over the pandemic time. It must have been incredibly difficult for them. They've had to do everything from home or very little face-to-face stuff, which is unusual for them, obviously. So I just really think that we should all be thanking them amazingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Any other comments? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Braze.
Yes, yes, I would agree with everything that Councillor Devine said, but also yes, I think this is a very fair rent increase. We are one of the lowest for rents in the country, and I think we do have that very ambitious target to meet for energy efficiency, etc. And the Tenant Steering Group seems to be happy with this, and it was a majority of the tenants surveyed. So all good as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you for that support, Councillor Braze. Any other colleagues want to pass comments? No, if not, I'm still watching, but if not, we'll move to the recommendations. Are these recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I think that's the end of the meeting today. Thank you very much for coming along, and we'll see you sometime in the future.
Thank you, Convener.
Thank you.
Thank you.